Every rider thinks they know which Harley engines are solid and which ones to avoid. But experts who actually tear these engines apart will tell you something different. Today, we are exposing the 6 worst Harley Davidson engines and the 4 best, based on what really happens under the metal. Stay with us, because trusting the wrong one does not just cost money, it exposes how little you actually knew about the bike you chose. Number 6, AMF era Shovelhead. When people think about Harley Davidson, they imagine that deep, unmistakable rumble, timeless styling, and machines built to outlast generations. But not every engine carrying that badge lived up to the promise. The AMF era Shovelhead stands as one of the clearest examples of that disconnect. To understand why, you have to step into a very different chapter of Harley's story, when the company was under the control of American Machine and Foundry. This period was defined less by craftsmanship and more by production pressure, and it showed in the final product. Now here is the thing, the Shovelhead itself was not fundamentally flawed. It was meant to build on the success of the earlier Panhead, offering more power and updated internals. On paper, it had everything going for it, but once it hit the road, reality told a different story. Owners quickly began noticing persistent oil leaks, excessive engine heat, and a level of mechanical inconsistency that made long rides feel uncertain. It was not just the occasional issue, it became part of the ownership experience. Riders even joked that these bikes would mark their territory everywhere they stopped. And the real problem was not just inconvenience, it was trust. Keeping a Shovelhead from this era running smoothly often required constant attention. Tolerances were inconsistent, assembly quality varied, and reliability depended heavily on luck as much as maintenance. Meanwhile, brands like Honda and Yamaha were producing engines that started easier, ran cooler, and demanded far less from their owners. Today, many surviving Shovelheads have been rebuilt, upgraded, and refined, almost like a second life, correcting the flaws they left the factory with. And that says a lot, because what riders admire now is not what it was, it is what it had to become. That is why the AMF era Shovelhead lands at number 6. Not because it lacked identity, but because it struggled to deliver consistency when it mattered most. And if you care about what is really inside the engine, not just the badge on the tank, go ahead and subscribe. That kind of support is what lets us keep breaking things down at this level instead of staying surface level. The AMF era Shovelhead showed just how damaging poor manufacturing and loose tolerances could be. Constant leaks, overheating, and a level of inconsistency that riders simply could not trust. But what makes this even more frustrating is that Harley did not just struggle in the past. The real surprise comes in the next step forward, where a far more modern engine still carried a hidden flaw that could destroy itself from the inside out. Number 5, early twin Cam 88. Now we move out of the distant past and into a much more modern chapter of Harley Davidson history. And that is exactly what makes this one sting a little more. Because the twin Cam 88 was not supposed to struggle. Introduced at the end of the 1990s, this engine was designed to replace the long-running Evolution platform with something stronger, smoother, and more future-ready. It brought increased displacement, improved airflow, and a more refined riding experience. On the surface, it looked like a clear step forward, but buried inside was a design choice that would quietly undermine its reputation: the cam chain tensioner system. Instead of relying on durable gear-driven cams, early versions used spring-loaded plastic tensioner shoes to control the cam chains. Over time, those components would wear down, sometimes gradually, sometimes surprisingly fast. And when that wear went too far, the consequences were not minor. Fragments from the deteriorating tensioners could circulate through the engine, increasing the risk of serious internal damage. For many riders, that meant facing costly repairs or even full rebuilds if the issue was not caught early. What makes this more significant is how widely it was reported. Independent mechanics, experienced owners, and long-distance riders all flagged the same concern. Inspections became a routine recommendation, not a precaution. Eventually, Harley Davidson addressed the issue with improved designs, including hydraulic systems that offered better durability and peace of mind. That change speaks volumes. In today's market, twin-cam 88 bikes still hold value, but condition tells the real story. Models with upgraded components tend to stand out, while untouched versions raise questions for informed buyers. And that pattern reveals the truth. Once the weak point is corrected, the engine becomes far more dependable. But in its original form, it carried a hidden vulnerability that too many riders only discovered after the damage was done. That issue did not just show up overnight, it caught a lot of riders mid-ownership. If you have ever run into something like that, or even heard about it before buying, leave a comment. Those stories help others spot problems before they turn into serious damage. The twin-cam 88 tried to move Harley into a more advanced era, yet that cam chain tensioner issue proved that even modern engineering can fail in ways that are expensive and catastrophic. But not every problem comes from complexity. In fact, the next machine takes us in the opposite direction, back to a simpler design where the issues were not hidden inside, but felt every second you were on the bike. Number 4, Ironhead Sportster engine. This is one of the most recognizable, yet most debated engines ever built by Harley Davidson, the Ironhead Sportster. Now, on the surface, this engine carries a certain reputation. Riders often describe it as tough, mechanical, and full of personality. And to be fair, that reputation did not come out of nowhere. But there is another side to the story that does not get mentioned nearly as often, because owning one was a very different experience than admiring one. Produced for decades, the Ironhead powered multiple generations of Sportsters and helped define Harley's smaller displacement lineup. It was simple in design, undeniably classic, and deeply rooted in old-school engineering. But that simplicity came with trade-offs. Let us start with heat. These engines ran hot, uncomfortably hot in certain conditions. The iron construction held onto heat far more than later aluminum designs, which made stop-and-go traffic or extended rides far less forgiving than riders expected. Then there is the constant upkeep. This was not an engine you could ignore between service intervals. It demanded regular attention, adjustments, tuning, and careful monitoring just to keep it running at its best. Compared to more refined engines from competitors like Honda or Triumph motorcycles, it felt labor-intensive. And of course, the leaks. Oil seepage was not unusual for older Harley engines, but with the Ironhead, it could become a recurring issue as components aged and tolerances shifted. Starting it could be another challenge altogether. Early kickstart versions were not always cooperative, requiring proper technique and a bit of patience before the engine finally came to life. Today, many Ironheads on the road have been rebuilt, restored, or modified, often significantly. And just like the engines we have already covered, that tells you something important. The better they run now, the more work has been done to fix what they originally lacked. The Ironhead Sportster made its weaknesses obvious: vibration, leaks, and a riding experience that demanded patience. But at least it stayed true to Harley's raw, mechanical identity. That raises a completely different kind of problem, and it is exactly what pushes this list into the next direction. What happens when Harley fixes performance, but loses its own soul in the process? Number 3, V-Rod Revolution. At first glance, this engine does not belong anywhere near a worse list, because unlike the others we have covered, the Revolution was not built with shortcuts or outdated ideas. It was engineered to push Harley Davidson into an entirely new era, and in many ways, it succeeded. Developed alongside Porsche, this power plant brought in liquid cooling, dual overhead camshafts, and a high revving character that completely broke away from tradition. It delivered strong top-end power, smoother operation, and a level of refinement that older Harley engines simply could not match. On paper, it was a clear step forward, but out on the road, the story changed. Because what experts and longtime riders noticed was not a flaw in performance, it was a shift in personality. This engine did not feel like a Harley. The power delivery came higher in the rev range. The exhaust note lacked that deep, uneven rumble, and the overall riding experience leaned more toward a performance machine than a laid-back cruiser. For riders who valued that low-end torque and signature heartbeat, something felt missing, and that gap created resistance. Harley Davidson has always been about more than numbers. It is about connection, sound, and a certain raw mechanical presence. Beyond that, there were practical concerns. Heat buildup and riding position became common complaints, especially during extended rides in warmer climates. Maintenance was also more complex compared to the simpler air-cooled engines many riders were used to working on. Now, to be fair, this engine is reliable, powerful, and ahead of its time. In fact, many riders today appreciate it far more than they did when it first appeared. But at launch, it divided the community in a way few engines ever have. The V-Rod Revolution engine proved Harley could build serious performance, but it also showed that power alone is not enough if it alienates the core riders who built the brand. So the next step was not about going faster, it was about winning those riders back. And that brings us to the next engine, where Harley tried to refine everything, but still could not escape early-stage problems. Number 2, early Milwaukee-Eight. This engine was meant to move Harley Davidson forward, the early Milwaukee-Eight. When it arrived in 2017, it carried serious expectations. This was supposed to be the next chapter, more refined, more efficient, and more powerful than anything before it. With 4 valves per cylinder, improved airflow, and updated cooling strategies, it looked like a major evolution on paper. And in many ways it was. But early versions told a more complicated story. One of the most common complaints from riders and mechanics centered around heat. In stop-and-go traffic or warmer regions, engine temperatures could become uncomfortable, especially on models without enhanced cooling support. That kind of heat does not just affect comfort, it changes how confident a rider feels over long distances. Then came oil sumping concerns. In certain early configurations, oil could collect where it should not, potentially affecting performance and long-term durability if left unaddressed. There were also smaller but noticeable issues. Valve train noise, inconsistent finishing details, and minor refinement gaps, nothing catastrophic on its own, but enough to raise eyebrows among experienced riders. And that is where expectations come into play. Because when Harley Davidson introduces a new generation engine, riders expect it to feel complete from day one. To be fair, later updates improved much of this. Refinements addressed heat, lubrication, and overall smoothness, turning the Milwaukee-Eight into a strong and dependable platform over time. But those early impressions, they stuck. The early Milwaukee-Eight aimed to correct past mistakes with better balance and modern engineering. Yet those initial issues, heat, oil flow concerns, and refinement gaps, reminded riders that progress does not always arrive perfectly. But those are problems of evolution. The next chapter goes deeper than that. It takes us back to a time when the limitations were not flaws in execution, but limits of the technology itself. Number 1, Flathead engine. Finally, this is not an engine that failed overnight. It is an engine that simply could not keep up. The Flathead. Developed during the early years of Harley Davidson, this side valve design played a major role in putting the brand on the map. It was simple, rugged, and easy to produce, at a time when reliability mattered more than outright performance. And to be fair, it did exactly what it was built to do. But even in its own time, limitations were already becoming clear. The core issue came down to design. Instead of placing the valves above the cylinder, like more advanced engines, the Flathead positioned them beside it. That layout restricted airflow, reduced combustion efficiency, and ultimately limited how much power the engine could produce. In simple terms, it struggled to breathe. That meant weaker acceleration, lower overall output, and more heat staying trapped inside the engine. As other manufacturers began refining overhead valve designs, the gap in performance started to grow, and it grew quickly. Brands like Honda and BMW would later push engineering even further. But even before that, the direction of progress was already clear, and Harley Davidson saw it too. That is why the Flathead was eventually replaced by more advanced engines like the Knucklehead, which brought better airflow, stronger performance, and a clear step into the future. Today, Flathead-powered motorcycles still hold value, but not because of performance. Their appeal comes from history, rarity, and the role they played in shaping early American motorcycling. Because compared to what came after, this engine is outmatched in nearly every measurable way. Before we move on, I want to know where you stand after all of this. Do these earlier engine issues change how you see Harley, or is it just part of their history to you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I would really like to hear